Let's talk about regionalism. Now, I know it sounds kind of dry, maybe a little academic, but it's actually the engine behind one of the most incredible political projects in all of human history. A project that asks this huge question: could a bunch of old rival nations ever actually become something like a United States of Europe? To even begin to answer that, we have to go way back. You have to start here. You just have to. This was Europe in 1945, a continent that had literally ripped itself to shreds twice in just 30 years. I mean, all the treaties, all the promises of never again after the First World War, they had failed, just spectacularly. The air was filled with more than just dust. It was filled with this deep, profound sense of failure and a truly terrifying question about what could possibly come next. And really, this was the heart of it all, the big, scary problem. How on earth do you take nations like France and Germany, I mean, they'd been fighting each other for generations, and convince them to work together? And not just to trade some goods, but to actually give up a piece of their own power, their control over their own destiny, all for the promise of a peaceful future together. It honestly seemed impossible. Well, the answer that clawed its way out of all that rubble was a powerful and, at the time, a pretty radical idea: regionalism.
So what is it really? Put simply, regionalism is just neighbors teaming up. Instead of every country for itself, a group of nations in the same part of the world decides, hey, let's pool our resources and work together on the stuff that affects all of us. Whether that's rebuilding an economy or protecting the environment or, and this was the big one, making sure another war just can't happen.
But there's a catch, and it is a huge one. For regionalism to actually work, countries have to be willing to give up a little piece of this, their sovereignty. And that's the absolute right to make your own laws, control your own borders, and basically run your own show. It's the price you pay to get into the club. And believe me, it is the source of pretty much every single debate and crisis that follows.
Now, it's super easy to get regionalism mixed up with globalization, but they're definitely not the same thing. Think of it like this. Globalization is the whole world getting more connected. Regionalism is one specific neighborhood deciding to, say, build a stronger fence or maybe plant a shared community garden. It can be a step towards global integration, making a whole group of countries stronger on the world stage, or it can be a shield against it, protecting local industries from all those global pressures.
And nowhere, I mean absolutely nowhere, has this idea been tested more dramatically than in Europe, in what turned out to be a totally unprecedented experiment.
So this whole European project didn't just pop up overnight. Oh no, it was built slowly, piece by painful piece, treaty by treaty. It all kicked off in 1951 with something really, really practical: putting French and German coal and steel under joint control. Now, why does that matter? Well, you can't build tanks, you can't build guns without coal and steel. By tying their war industries together, war became not just unthinkable, but physically impossible. Pretty clever, right? From there, it grew into a common market, then a true single market, and finally, in 1992, the political thing we all know today as the European Union. And it all started with just 6 countries. That's it: France, West Germany, Italy, and the Benelux countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Just a small core group, willing to take that first crazy leap of faith. And then, look at this. By 2013, it had ballooned to 28 member states, stretching all the way from Ireland to the edge of Russia. This massive growth just goes to show how powerful that promise of peace and prosperity really was. But of course, it also made the job of actually governing the thing infinitely more complicated.
So you might be asking, how does this big, grand idea of a single market actually work in the real world? Well, the answer, and you're not going to believe this, actually comes down to a bottle of French liquor. Yep, Cassis de Dijon. Okay, so back in the 70s, Germany tried to ban this stuff. Why? Because its alcohol content was too low to be officially called a liqueur under German law. The case went all the way to the European court, and the court's ruling was a bombshell. They basically said, if a product is safe and legal in one member country, it's legal in all of them. And just like that, Germany had to give up a piece of its sovereignty, its own precious purity laws, all for the sake of the bigger common market. It's the perfect example of that real-world trade-off that's at the very heart of the EU. So this all leads to the key question, right? Who's actually in charge here? When you've got all these different countries, how do you make decisions? This is the constant tug of war between cooperation and control. And it really boils down to 2 competing ideas. On one side, you have supranationalism. That's where countries agree to give power up to a higher authority, like the European Commission, that can make rules for everybody. Think of it like a neighborhood association with a powerful manager who can make binding rules. Then you've got intergovernmentalism. That's where countries work together, but each one keeps its veto. That's more like a neighborhood meeting where absolutely nothing gets done unless every single homeowner agrees. The EU? Well, it's this unique and often really messy mix of both.
And here are the key players trying to manage that constant tension. You've got the Commission, which is supposed to be Team Europe, looking out for the common interest. Then there's the Council, where the national leaders come to fight for their own country's agenda. And then you have the Parliament, which is elected by you, the people, to represent the citizens directly. And watching over it all is the Court of Justice, acting as the ultimate referee, making sure everyone plays by the rules. It's this whole complicated system of checks and balances, and it's all designed to keep this massive experiment from just flying apart.
Okay, so after more than 70 years, what's the verdict? Did this wild experiment in regionalism actually create a new global superpower?
Well, the answer is it's complicated. Economically, absolutely. The EU is the largest single market on the planet, a true giant. But as we saw with the huge Greek debt crisis, being that interconnected can also be a massive weakness. Politically, yeah, the EU carries a lot of weight in trade deals. But when it comes to foreign policy, it's often kind of paralyzed by trying to get all its members to agree on something, and each one has its own agenda.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly sums up the EU's biggest challenge. The EU must speak with one voice. Otherwise, its foreign policy will lack coherence and strength. See, on paper, the EU should be a foreign policy titan. But in the real world, getting everyone to agree on a single decisive plan of action, whether it's about Russia or China or a crisis in the Middle East, that is its greatest and most frustrating challenge.
Which brings us right back to where we started. From the ashes of 1945 to the complex political beast it is today, the European Union is still wrestling with this one fundamental question. It is a trade-off. It has delivered a period of peace and prosperity that is completely unprecedented in European history. But it comes at a cost, that little piece of sovereignty that gets debated every single day in parliaments and coffee shops from Lisbon to Helsinki. And whether that price is still worth paying, well, that's the central question that's going to define Europe's future.